Good afternoon or morning, everyone. This is Christina Tanasachuk, the executive editor of Homeland Security Today and CEO of GTSC, bringing you another tremendous person in our lineup of awardees for the Homeland Security Today Awards. Today, we get to talk with our most valuable player from the state and local arena in the United States. And I am incredibly fortunate because I went to high school with him. And I have pictures of us hanging out after prom on our sofa. So it is really, really wonderful to welcome the Minneapolis Fire Department Chief Bryan Tyner.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to see you again. And
It
just
is.
really amazing to see what you did for Minneapolis, what you did last year during a very tumultuous time of not only COVID, but also the murder of George Floyd. And I think that many people don't even understand the role the fire department played. So, you were recognized for a number of things. And before we really dig into talking about all the things that you did do, I wanted to take a moment to read something that you wrote on your Facebook page, because as we kind of discussed before we started, your leadership during this time really, really was tremendous. And you weren't chief at that time, right?
No, I was the assistant chief then. I
Yeah, you
just
were
became
assistant.
the chief in
And
December.
yeah, this was the rocket to chief because
Yes.
truly your leadership in both COVID and the George Floyd aftermath was tremendous. So this is what Chief Tyner wrote at the time on his Facebook. It's a few nights into the protests, and as firefighters, we're exhausted, but still stand ready to serve, ready to save lives, ready to put out the fires, without pause and without hesitation. As the assistant chief, it's hard for me to express just how proud I am of my brothers and sisters who've been responding through the exhaustion, through the rocks and abuse to serve our communities. Please accept my gratitude and sincere thanks for the manner and professionalism in which you have responded. Thank you. You are appreciated. I was so touched by that. I mean, we're Facebook friends, so I got to see that. And it really touched me because it must have been very, very difficult for you. We heard that there were like 30 fires set in the city. You all were responding to that. You were responding to the riots, and you were kind of put in a position of being spokesperson for the whole deal.
I was. So, spokesperson was one of my responsibilities as the assistant chief of administration at the time. And so I was the spokesperson, but then I also had, five other jobs that we had to do. We were literally working around the clock, about 22 hours a day, get a 2 hour nap, and then back at it. So it was a trying time. As a matter of fact, things run together so much that I actually had forgotten I had written it. So until you just read it again and brought it back
Yeah,
to me.
I did not forget because it is so much what a leader should say from the heart, and it feels so authentic and from the heart, like not you someone telling you to say, oh, you better support your troops, but feeling you on the ground. And given the situation, was probably difficult professionally and personally.
Absolutely. And it was, reflected what I felt then, and it actually still reflects what I feel right now. So
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about the response of the fire department after the murder of George Floyd.
well, it was tough. We hadn't had any civil unrest of that magnitude in Minneapolis since 1968. No one on this department had ever dealt with anything like that. We had standard operating procedures in place for civil disturbance responses, but they hadn't been exercised very much, and they certainly hadn't been trained on very much. So, not having time to plan for civil disturbance, which is things together very quickly and figure out how we were going to respond very quickly. And so it was a challenge at first. We were met with a lot of resistance from rioters and protesters, which the fire department is not used to. Law enforcement often meets with a lot of resistance. The fire department usually does not. We met with rocks and bricks and bottles and things like that being thrown at us with dragged in a way to try to trap us into places. And so it was very challenging. In addition to that, for the first couple of days, we didn't have any security component to ensure that we could get in and out of scenes safely. And that is actually part of our civil response or civil disturbance response protocols. And so we were trying to respond without that. And one of the hardest things we had to do was actually have to back off, allow things to burn until we could find a way to get those responses safely.
There we go.
But one of the challenges we encountered is that for the first 2 days, we didn't have a security component. Normally, our civil disturbance response protocols call for law enforcement or some other agency to provide a security component for us so that we can get in and out of scenes safely and secure the scenes while we're fighting the fires. So one of the hardest things for us to do as firefighters was having to back off of those responses until we were able to get in safely. We did call for the National Guard, and they were able to deploy around midnight of the second night of rioting. From there, things went a lot better. They were fantastic. Law enforcement, Minneapolis Police Department, unfortunately, was inundated with dealing with the other areas of the riots, so they weren't in that area. But once the National Guard came and we were able to secure those things safely, things went a lot better. That being said, it was still a lot of long days and nights. And we're wearing people down, but people were up to the task and were able to get all those fires out. Some of those fires we had to respond to multiple times. And very fortunately, weren't really many residential buildings that caught on fire, and so we didn't have very many fatalities. In fact, we only had one as a result of the riots after the George Floyd was a person who had wandered back into a building trying to get stuff out. So I think it was actually almost a miracle that we only had one fatality out of all of those fires with everything.
Were any firefighters injured?
Actually, that was another probably minor miracle in itself, is that we didn't have any firefighter injuries, no serious injuries.
The smart part of pulling back. Pulling back.
Yes, well, yes, the smart part of pulling back. But even just the normal injuries that we get from fighting fires, we didn't have any.
Absolutely. No, that's excellent. And so you had all of that. And then in addition, you were also dealing with COVID. Talk to us a little bit about dealing with COVID.
Yeah, COVID produced a large challenge for us, and that not only the unknown from COVID in its early stages as far as the science and how it could spread and things like that, but trying to protect ourselves. We didn't only have to protect ourselves on medical runs, which we were able to do using the proper, but we also had to protect ourselves in the station from spreading COVID to each other. And in the early days of COVID, there were a number of situations where a member would show up to work, maybe be asymptomatic or not start feeling symptoms until halfway through the shift, test positive for COVID. And because he had exposed the rest of the shift, we would have to quarantine the entire shift, the entire station for 14 days. Contractor to clean the station. Then we'd have to hire back people to work those shifts. 24-hour, 365-day operation. And so we can't just shut that down. We have to back up. And so it became a challenge and it became expensive. And it was a little worrisome for a while with people worrying about possibly contracting COVID and bringing it back to their family.
Absolutely. Well, it's always interesting because with many of these situations, first responders are also impacted. So, people kind of forget. They're like, oh, they're going to save us. Well, you have families too. You have your own, person to take care of. And so people just assume everything's going to be okay. But making sure that the first responders are also taken care of is a huge lesson learned. And I know many departments did think about that. Were there protocols in place to keep you protected and kind of a backup plan?
There were protocols in place to keep us protected, but being as we, like the civil unrest, hadn't dealt with the pandemic like this before, we had to kind of put those protocols into place. And so, of course, we used recommendations from the CDC and from the state health department to try to develop those, but we had to develop those protocols on the fly. And, they change over time as the science changes. Fire service, unfortunately, is a little resistant to change. And so, we would have to really carefully define, what the change is going to be and why we're doing it, put a buy into that. And in some cases, kind of, the heavy hand to make sure that people were compliant. Sorry.
No problem.
Make sure that people.
Yeah. You had another quote on Facebook when you were getting your shot. Now, this is after you had been promoted to chief, but you were seen, they took pictures of you getting your shots and saying, I'm
Yes.
getting vaccinated. So, and you wrote, I don't care where it came from or what's going on with that, but we need to get vaccinated. So, your leadership was so multifaceted. I mean, you led during the George Floyd riots, you led during COVID, and then personally, you have been very engaged with the Special Olympics. And have
Yes.
two special needs sons. So I don't know how you make time for leading in absolutely everything, but tell us a little bit more about engaging with that, because that's really tremendous work too.
Yeah, well, in COVID, actually, I took the first shot for the city of Minneapolis. So I was kind of the guinea pig for the city.
Let's see
Um,
how he'll do, and then maybe we'll do it.
yeah, exactly. But, I don't want to ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And so I was happy to do that. Special Olympics is a passion of mine. I have two special needs kids. One of mine, special needs kids, Bryan Jr., is a Special Olympics athlete. How I initially got started is I went to go sign him up for Special Olympics basketball, and I got them all signed up. And the leader of the delegation was like, "By the way, what are you doing? We need a coach." And so I ended up becoming a coach, and I loved it. Working with those kids. I call them kids. They're actually young adults, but when you're 53 years old, everybody below 30 is a child to you. But
I feel ya.
yeah,
We were in the same class.
right. But they just get so much joy out of playing and coaching them up, and a lot of it isn't just coaching basketball, but it's also spending time with them and teaching them life lessons and helping them develop into the people that they want to be. And so it's really been as much a blessing to me. I think probably more than so than them. But it's great. The other funny thing is, when you're coaching them, teach them things in practice. But unlike when I was playing, when your coach could, kind of change the game plan and tell you what he wants you to do. But these guys, if we haven't practiced it in practice, they're not going to do it. So you just get everything set in practice, and then once I get to the game, it's just let them go.
Well, that's amazing. You are literally a mentor and leader in so many different ways. What advice do you have for uh, chiefs and battalion chiefs coming up in the service, or those who are already in leadership? Because dealing with, civil unrest to dealing with COVID, those are different skills. And you seem to have them all. And then giving back and mentoring to the youth and developing that next generation. That's all the stuff that leaders are made of. So what's your advice for those folks?
Well, first, I think you need to be flexible when you're trying to figure out your plans. incorporate as many viewpoints as you can as you're putting that plan together. Sometimes I have great ideas, but sometimes my ideas aren't the greatest, and they can certainly be improved by including the input of your. Another thing that I have talked to my people about is just centering around respect. And I've asked them to do three things. I've asked them to respect our profession, train yourself, become professionals. I've asked them to respect the public. They are the reason we are here. They're the reason that we are able to live the dream, so to speak, and respect each other. People all over the world respect firefighters, and sometimes we don't always afford that respect to each other. And so that's important. We're all worthy of that respect, and so respect each other. I think if you can get those three things together, then everything else.
I couldn't agree more. That's and what's great about that is that they're not simplistic concepts, but you explain them in a simple way that everyone can understand. And I think that's key to communicating, leadership qualities and things to others, is that it's explainable. Like everything you said is very, very understandable. So, well, I wanna just congratulate you again for achieving most valuable player in 2020. You've done a tremendous job on behalf of the state of Minnesota, but certainly on behalf of the country, because it's people like you at the local level who are keeping our cities together, who are keeping our people together, who are continuing to do their jobs and fight every day to put out the fires, you literally and figuratively, um, and certainly lead through things like the pandemic. So I'm honored to have known you for so long, and to be able to be part of recognizing your tremendous work. Thank you so, so much, and congratulations to you, Bryan.
Well, thank you.
Chief
Yeah,
Bryan.
yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for the award. Thank you for being a friend to me all those years ago, and it is great to see you again, Christina. And I hope we don't have to go so long without.
Oh, heck no. Heck no.
Yes.
You're coming out. You're coming out to see me now. We're
That's
gonna
right.
have that party. We're gonna have the party where I get to feed you shrimp and lobster at some point.
That sounds good to
it.
me.
You deserve a heck of a party. So thank you. You have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing what other great things you're going to do as chief.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care.
Bye now.